All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on what part of the world you are joining us from. I am Alex Faust, your host of Conversations at the Edge. And today I'm very excited to introduce a very new guest to the Growth Institute community, Conor Neill. He's a sought after speaker on leadership, a senior lecturer of leadership communications at IESE Business School, and the president of Vistage in Spain. As an entrepreneur, he's founded 5 companies, selling 16 private jets and building the 3rd largest fleet of private jets in Spain. He's a visiting professor at the University College Dublin, University of Montevideo, and permanent faculty on the entrepreneurs organization Global Leadership Academy. He has a YouTube channel on leadership and influence with over 270,000 subscribers and 22 million views. And I'm very excited to have him join the community today to talk about kind of a new topic around the power of persuasion and the art of leading people to actually take action, not just leading for leading's sake, but leading people to do the things that we want them to do. So Conor, welcome to Conversations at the Edge. Where are you joining in from today?
I'm here in Barcelona.
Well, it's excellent to have you. And a reminder to the folks who are here live, if you do have questions, please feel free to type them into the chat at any time. In the last 10 minutes, we reserve for you and your questions. So with that, Conor, I know a lot of your teaching stems from Aristotle, and I'm curious to get into that and why you chose Aristotle. How did you start learning about these things? If you could just kind of start with some background for us.
Yeah, I think if you can see just behind me on the shelf, you'll see a small statue of Aristotle, who I keep there with me, because in some ways I feel that my teachings, I'm just channeling Aristotle. And you asked why Aristotle, and I guess because I kind of discovered he addresses the questions that I find that are still of interest to me and to many entrepreneurs and business leaders today. Such as, what is a good life? What's a good day? How do you make decisions? And I tell people when I start teaching, everything that I'm about to teach is stolen from a book that was written 2,300 years ago. The book called The Rhetoric by Aristotle. And Rhetoric by Aristotle, he didn't sit down and write it. It's the notes of a student of his who sat through his classes on the art of persuasion. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here on Aristotle's philosophy, his answers to what makes a good life. He does have one thing that I think is very powerful. He talks about values, and he makes a list of the most important values, but he says there's one value that is above all the other values, because without this value, none of the other values have any worth. And this value is courage. And to me, I've been part of entrepreneurs organization for 17 years. I've been teaching in a business school for many years. And sometimes when I'm working with an EO forum, when I'm working with senior business leaders, I tell them that, an issue that's worth us dealing with in this space is anything that makes your hands sweat when you think about sharing it. If it doesn't make your hands sweat, if it doesn't require some courage to be vulnerable and open up, it's probably not an issue that's worth bringing into this space. And people very often at the beginning of a session of mine smile and think, haha, that's very funny. A few minutes in, they realize my role in the classroom is not to provide content. I think today, if anyone wants to learn something, YouTube has millions of videos. Every book ever written is probably out on the internet somewhere. So this question, my role as a teacher, your role in this podcast is not so much to be the source of content. I think that there's 2 things I want to achieve when I step in as a teacher to a class. One, that people believe that this could make a difference in their own life, that this content, becoming more persuasive, using the frameworks, these ideas, doing the work that Conor will put us through, I will be more able to achieve the goals that are important to me, both personally and professionally. The second thing they need to feel is to see that a little bit of work generates a growth, generates a return, that they can see by actually following some of these patterns, these structures, doing the work, almost within minutes, I can see a difference in the way that people respond to me. So if I can give these two feelings, one, this is important, and two, you're going to get onto YouTube, you're going to read the books, you're going to subscribe to the podcasts and begin to let this content come into your life.
Great, thank you. So this community is a community of leaders looking to create more impact and reduce the drama of building the businesses that they're a part of. And you mentioned there are 4 things that you believe a leader must be able to do if they're going to move people to action or an outcome, and inevitably scale their impact and reduce drama. So I'm wondering if you could share those 4 things.
Well, the 4 things would be what you need to do to communicate. A leader is more than just a communicator. So I think I'd be clear, this is what you need to do to communicate well. And to communicate well, whether as a leader, as a parent, as a friend, you need 4 things. 1, have something to say. 2, say it well. 3, say it with intensity. 4, connect with the audience. And 1, have something to say. The most valuable things that we have to share are our own life, our own experiences, our own experience of success and failure, our dreams, our hopes, and learning to capture in a notebook. For me, I think one of the linchpin habits in my life is just journaling, writing down each morning, each afternoon, what's going on. So to have something to say, one thing is get a journal and just start to write down what's happening to you. Write down what dreams you have, especially embarrassing dreams that you don't want other people to see. Sadly, when we stop being kids, we often lose the big dreams that are kind of embarrassing. For my 6-year-old, she can dream really big. She's not embarrassed by it. My 15-year-old starts to move her dreams down to what's realistic. And by 25, 30 years old, most of us have forgotten what we dreamt about and have gone down to what's realistic. So have something to say is you need to remember your dreams. You need to remember why you want to work, why you want to build the business. Say it well. One of the worst ways of communicating is what I call thinking out loud. And it's very clear when someone is in the mode of thinking out loud versus in the mode of actually communicating. If something is important to you, write it down. Writing something down puts structure to it. Then switch on mobile phone, switch it into selfie video mode and record yourself saying it. And the first time you share the words of a vision, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be cluttered. It's not going to be clear. So make sure you don't do it to the most important people. Do it on your phone. Do it to your dog. Practice 5, 6, 7 times on your mobile phone so you get a feeling of how these words come out of your mouth. Don't let it be the first time that you're in front of the audience that can make a huge difference in your life, that you speak out loud for the first time the words that convey what your dream is, what the resources you're looking for, why it's important. So to say it well, say it often. 3rd, intensity. And the secret to caring is care. Stop and remember what you care about. And I mean, Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, said that there are 3 whys that can get you anything through any how. Number 1 is other people. Like, who are the other people you serve? Who are the other people that you really want to be there to help them really face the lives that they have? The 2nd is a project only you can complete. So what are the projects that only you can complete, that you are needed here on this earth for? And the 3rd is to see the journey, to see the suffering, to see the problem, the drama, not as problems, but this is life. Life is problems. Running a business is choosing to face problems. The day you don't have any problems is a very worrying time. And here, I think problems push us to grow. And you will be never given a problem that is too big for you. Sometimes looking at the problem, you think, I wish I didn't have this problem. I feel small, I feel incapable. But it's only the existence of that problem that's going to force you to look inside yourself, look around you, and find the resources you truly have to bring to the world. So intensity is you got to care. You got to connect to why these things matter. And I think we know when we're speaking with someone who cares, and we know when we're speaking to someone who's just posting it in, they're just going through the motions. And the fourth is connect with the person, connect with the other. And I often start my classes and tell them, you know, if you only remember one thing about powerful communication is this. There's two things: what I want to say, what you need to hear. If you're speaking from what I want to say, it is not great communication. If you're stopping and you're putting yourself in the shoes of the other, you're thinking, who are they? What are they facing? What is quality of life for them? What do they need from me here? And start from that. What did they need from me? This is putting yourself in their shoes, connecting with them. And sometimes when you ask, what do they need to hear? The answer is, I don't know, which is a wonderful, honest answer. You need to go and ask. You need to go and spend time in their life. You need to get to know them. One thing as a leader, I think one of the roles of the leader is to just walk around an organization and keep asking these 4 questions. You know, anyone you cross in the corridors, anyone you see anywhere, you ask these 4 questions. 1, what's going well? 2, what's not going well? 3, what would you change? 4, what else? And if anyone listening to this podcast thinks, oh, I love those questions, writes them down, and tomorrow they roll into work and down every corridor, near the water cooler, by the printer, they ask people, what's going well? What's not going well? What you're going to get back is faces thinking, the first time you ask these questions, you're not going to get very deep answers. The second time, not so deep answers. It's asking these questions over and over and over again until people realize that you care. You want to know what's going well. You want to know what they're dealing with. You want to know what they're thinking that would change. And I guess sometimes as a leader, you can feel that whatever they share, you have a responsibility to act immediately and now. You don't. The leader's job is not to solve problems. It's to make sure that there's a feeling within the organization that we know what we're dealing with. We know where we're going, and we know that there's some problems, and that the leader has a real sense of what's going on in my life, of what I'm facing. Not that he's solving it or she's solving it, but there's an awareness.
That's really great advice.
Again,
thank you.
Have something to say it well, say it with intensity, and connect with the human beings.
That's great. Thank you. So one of the big mistakes that you've shared in your course around communication that leaders are making is what you're calling an idealistic rant. And I encourage you to kind of share what that is and how you've seen it play out in, you know, the workspace and when you're communicating with your internal team, and why it's, you know, an ineffective communication method.
Well, sometimes I think, you know, something that I learned from some of the tools of the Growth Institute, you know, the one-page strategic plan, where you go from what to do today and what are the rocks and what's 30 years out. And to me, there's something important in leadership of being able to deal with these 2 time horizons of long-term, what's never going to change, what's always going to be right, what are our values, what's our dream. And, you know, I tell people that a 5-year strategic plan is not going to attract great people, because 5 years is just a list of tasks. You need 30 years to really dream big and have, you know, I think Jim Collins, the big, hairy, audacious goal. It needs to be so big, it's almost embarrassing, that when you say it, people kind of laugh at the audaciousness of it. But if that's big, you're going to attract great people. But you need to know what you're doing today. And I think idealistic rant is, sometimes there's things that we know need to change, but we don't know what the step we can take today with the resources we have, either myself with you or within our organization. So what I say is, leadership is to see a change that is required in the future and bring together the resources to take the first step. And in your life, in my life, in the life of the listeners, the resources are human beings. Human beings control budgets. Human beings control attention. Human beings can bring other human beings with them. And an idealistic rant, one example I give of an idealistic rant would be someone stepping up in front of the organization and saying, every child in the world deserves a roof over their head. Every child in the world deserves to go to school till the age of 18, not have to work. Every child in the world deserves fresh, clean water at home from a tap. Every child in the world deserves a hospital within 10 miles and nurses within 5 miles. Every child in the world deserves dignity. And there's a huge applause. They come down from the stage. Do you know how many children notice a single difference? 0. This is an idealistic rant. You take all of the energy, all of the positive desire of people to make this world better, but you don't channel it anywhere. And I think your listeners care not just about having a big vision, but how do you execute? How do you bring together the resources, the organization, the structure, the communication, so we take action, that action happens today that moves us forward? I think, there's a speech I give at the end of my courses when there's a good bit of connection. And I say, back in 2008, I went through a very tough period as an entrepreneur. My business went bankrupt. We were in private jets, and post Lehman, the jets just stopped flying. And over a couple of months, we just watched our bank account drop down to almost 0. And for me, it was a really tough period of life. And for a lot of 2009, I was an angry, bitter person who felt that the world had happened to him. I was not on podcasts talking about positivity or Aristotle. I was angry and bitter and felt that this was not fair, that I had done nothing wrong, that it was not fair that I was now without cash. But during 2009, I had a moment where I guess 3 things came clear to me: faith, hope, and love. And hope is that action changes the future. Only action changes the future. Thinking about action changes nothing. If I think I should call my father, I'd like to see how my father is, and I think it and I don't take the action, nothing changes. If I pick up the phone and I dial the digits and I only get voicemail, I only leave a missed call, it's a small change. Action changes the future. But we human beings, we can live in intention. And I guess what entrepreneurs learn is how to turn intention into action, that only action changes. Only the phone call gets you the meeting. Only the meeting and making an offer gets you the sale. And this idea that in persuasion, you've got to sell a vision, but then you've got to get action here and now. And it's too easy to deceive ourselves that the other person is with us. It's only action that shows a commitment that really matters.
So talking about action, I know you have like an 8-part conversation communication method to get people to actually take the action and what that you're talking about. Can you go through the 8 parts briefly and kind of give us a structure of how you're encouraging leaders to communicate?
Well, I guess, Alex, the first thing I'd love, just before we got on this call, you shared some feedback about how this course that you went through yesterday was for you. I'd love you to talk about what it is that doing the course yesterday helped you with.
So I think the biggest thing was the emotional connection that you talk about in the first part and in the end part, bringing people in, reliving an experience about why something is important to you, making that connection with your audience. And then once you've gone through the other 8 parts, it's important to reconnect so they feel like things have come full circle once you've asked them to take the action.
Right. There's an EO speaker called Malik Mohammed, who is brilliant. And he shares a formula for changing people. And he says, connection plus challenge equals change. Without connection, challenge is just rude or bullying. It doesn't lead to change. You have to connect with a human being and then challenge them to get a change. And this emotional connection, one way of talking about it is there's a phrase I love, which is, we don't resist change. We resist being changed. And this 8-part structure, the logos-based speech structure, which has survived down from the time of Aristotle. So it's not an invention of mine. It has come from Aristotle. It worked 2,300 years ago, and it still works today. And I think even though technology has changed, Aristotle didn't speak on Zoom, didn't connect to Wi-Fi, didn't have internet, didn't have mobile phones, didn't fly on planes. But 2,300 years ago, the way one idea got from my mind to your mind and got you to do something that you would not have done had you not heard it from me, that hasn't changed. And one of the elements that's important is this idea of not pushing the change from me to you, but almost pulling you towards to make that it almost is you connect to why this is important to me in such a way that it almost feels like you also want to make this change. And that 8-part structure that I share in the course, the beginning and the end is very much about connection, about really helping the other to not see you as a speaker pushing something towards them, but almost connect with something that was important in your life to the degree that it feels like it's important to them as well. And this idea of pushing things at people. I have at home a 15-year-old and a 6-year-old daughter. And my 6-year-old daughter loves eggs. So sometimes at dinner, I've just heard them come home from school here. Sometimes at dinner, she'll have a tortilla, a Spanish omelet, potatoes, and broccoli. And I know, and she knows that she loves the eggs. Broccoli is not the biggest thing. Now, dinner starts, we all sit down, and my initial thought is, I'm not going to say anything tonight. Tonight, it's just going to be dinner time. I'm not going to say anything. Now, she eats all of the Spanish omelet. She's starting working on the potatoes. And I think, oof, if I don't say anything soon, she's going to tell me she's full and we've lost another day of vegetables. So I turn to her and I say, would you eat your broccoli? Now, in the moment that I say this, what's going to happen? 6-year-old girl sat at the table and her dad says, I want you to eat your broccoli. So if your home is anything like mine, what my daughter does is get her fork, jam it into 3 large bits of potato and puts it into her mouth and chews the potato while looking at me, waiting to see. So now I need to go to the nuclear level. So I say, if you don't eat all of your broccoli, there will be no iPad this week.
I thought you were going to say ice cream, but iPad too.
No, I think Minecraft on this thing outdoes ice cream. But when I go nuclear, and in our businesses as leaders, we can use this ways as well. Any use of power, any time when I push an idea towards you, a use of power creates a reaction. If your way of getting people to do things is by pushing the idea at them, using power, you will always generate rebellion. You will always generate a resistance. This is not people being mean. This is being human. We don't like when something is pushed at us. We like when we're pulled into the why of it. And when you go nuclear, so this might be, you say in your company, I'd like the report tomorrow, 10 minutes before the meeting. And tomorrow, 10 minutes before the meeting, nothing has arrived. You get on the phone, you say, if I don't see that report in the next 2 minutes, there'll be no bonus, there'll be this, there'll be that. What you are doing is creating resistance, creating a need for people to rebel. And the art of persuasion is not to push your ideas at people. It's to speak in such a way that you invite them into seeing what you see and to understanding how the world could be, and that they become curious. And a lot of what I teach and a lot of what Aristotle was interested in is this, that very often we have a wonderful vision, but we're clumsy in the way we share it. And our clumsiness in the way we share it pushes people away, makes it feel like it's my idea, not your idea. You can't participate in it. One of the things, we work with organizations to help them have a vision. And it's important that it's not the leader's vision. It's the whole company needs to own this vision. And if everyone in the company doesn't feel that they played a part in creating it, and also if they see the photo of it, they need to see there's a place for them in it that they helped create. So they need to feel that. And I guess, one part of persuasion is being clear that people are free to make a choice. They may not do what you ask, but you need to give them that choice in order to choose to be persuasive. And that choice means it becomes my responsibility to keep finding a way of communicating until they can see it. So I often say, after you do my course, I want you never to say, did you understand? Because did you understand makes it your responsibility to understand what I said. I will ask people when I finish my course, ask, have I been clear? Have I been clear? I'm taking the responsibility to keep going, to keep trying, to keep sharing it in different ways, keep telling different stories until Alex sees it. Have you understood makes it your responsibility, and you feel bad if you didn't get it, if you didn't see. So leadership from this idea of persuasion is, one, I treat you as free to choose, because if you freely choose to give, I'm going to get the best of you. If you give because you have to, I'm going to get the minimum requirement of what you need to give in order to comply with the audit that I might do.
So can we go back to the broccoli situation at the dinner table? How might you approach that from a persuasive standpoint? Instead of please eat your broccoli, how would you craft that message the next time broccoli is on the dinner plate?
Oh, well, if I gave away that secret, then I'd have no business left as a teacher of communication. I saved that lesson for the very end of the third day of the course with me. But the fundamental idea, I think, is to remember that if you push something at people, you are going to create resistance. And in the case of a 6-year-old child, it's easy to understand. Sometimes when you're speaking with adults, you think they're grown-ups. You think they're old enough to be mature. They're not. Inside each of us is a 5-year-old. And outside, we might be dressed as a grown adult, but the part of us that decides whether to give our best is the 5-year-old part of us. And that 5-year-old does not like to be told what to do. Now, there's many ways of communicating and sharing ideas. So one of the things that I would say that the context is when someone does something that you think is stupid, it's very easy to decide they are stupid. It's a very dangerous judgment to make. And for me, 17 years of teaching in business school, 20 years of being an entrepreneur, I think nobody ever does something stupid from their point of view, from their perspective. So if you see someone do something and you think that's a dumb action, the question you as a persuader, as a persuasive leader need to ask is, what are they looking at? What are they paying attention to? What are they valuing that makes this action a rationally correct action from their point of view? And when I'm engaging with them, one of the worst things you can do is tell someone you were wrong, because this again creates that need to justify. If I say, Alex, you were wrong, you don't do this podcast right, the 5-year-old within you is angry and needs to justify and react. There might be a rational part of you thinking, okay, Conor, but the 5-year-old within you is reacting. And this idea that if I know that if you're doing something and it's different to me, you're paying attention to something different. And my question is, what are you paying attention to? So there, if you see a lot of people doing something that is different from what you think is right, you need to go with these questions. What's working well? What's not working? What would you change? What else? And that begins to help you see the picture from their point of view. What are they seeing? What are they paying attention to? And it's going to be different. And this curiosity to how other people see the world. What are they valuing? What are they undervaluing? And if you want to get someone to retake a decision, so say you are working with a client that 3 years ago, between Growth Institute and another similar company, they picked the others, and you want them to now come and work with you. Now, the worst thing you could do is sit down with them and say, 2 years ago, you made a poor decision. Today, I want you to fix that decision. Because now they need to justify it, and you force them to find all the reasons to really lock down. The way it needs to be framed is 2 years ago, with the information you had available, you took the best choice. I would have done exactly the same. Today, there's some new information. And all I'd like to do today is show you some new information. And maybe when we look at the new information, if we were to retake the decision, maybe there might be a different answer. Would you be willing to listen while I share some new information that was not available 2 years ago? And again, they still need to be free to choose. Otherwise, it's not persuasion. If you are not giving the other person the freedom to choose, it is manipulation. And to me, the distinction between manipulation and persuasion, manipulation is I want you to do something that is of value to me. Persuasion, I want you to do something that is of value to you and to me. So persuasion is first putting yourself in the other person's shoes. What is painful to them? What are they struggling with? What is quality of life? What do they hope for? And only when I've fully seen that, and I've fully seen how the change I'd like you to make can help you achieve that, can I call it persuasion. If I'm starting from what I want, what I need to say, what I'd like to share, it's not persuasion, it's manipulation.
Awesome. Well, Conor, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a wonderful 30 minutes being spent with you. And I encourage our members, if you have access, please go watch Conor's course. It's a great 35 minutes that will really dig into how you can communicate really well, both internally and externally. So Conor, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Any final words before we turn out today?
I think a pleasure to have this opportunity. I think of all the things that I do, the one thing that my two daughters know is YouTuber. And I often think, what an amazing world to live in, that I can sit here in Barcelona, you over there, and through this little camera and this technology, we can reach so many people. And I don't think, and COVID, I think, has really accelerated this. And I think it's going to be amazing to see over the next 5-10 years what new opportunities, what new flexibility, what new things are going to come, because the power of communicating, not just face-to-face, but now through video.
Fantastic. Well, Conor, thank you again. Thank you to the community for joining us. And